Greetings and salutations, Greek students. We continue our study of participles, and particularly aorist participles, by turning to a new grammatical form of participles that we haven't talked about yet, called the genitive absolute. So in short summary, the genitive absolute is an instance where you have a phrase that includes a genitive participle, and usually a genitive noun or pronoun, that is usually at the very beginning of a sentence. It is grammatically set off from the rest of the sentence, and it frames its relevant to what's happening around the main subject verb of the sentence. So let's look at some examples and see how the genitive absolute functions. So the genitive absolute appears odd because the case of the participle usually is going to be dictated by its relationship to the rest of the sentence. But in the genitive absolute, the participle is set off. It's absolute. It's separate from the rest of the sentence. So for example, in epanton ton matheton tauta ex elthein hoi apostoloi, the main subject is the hoi apostoloi, and you have your verb ex elthon. So the apostles went out. That's your main subject and verb. But the rest of the sentence, the epanton ton matheton tauta, is the genitive absolute. So you have a genitive participle, this is a second aorist active participle, second aorist active participle. In the case of apon, apon is from lego. So it's that stem change, and so it's declined in the present active participle form. So it's not going to look like the aorist active participle. It looks like the present active participle, but the stem change tips you off that this is aorist. But noticeably, this is genitive, tone, apon, tone, matheton. So I'm going to make matheton, the disciples, the subject of my participle, having said, or after the disciples said these things. The main subject, the apostles, verb, went out. This is the main sentence, subject, verb, sometimes direct object. In this case, there is no direct object. The apostles went out. But this genitive absolute frames, it is related to giving some context for what's going on in the rest of the sentence. Another example here of the genitive absolute, again with one of these second aorists, where you have the verb es elthontes. Es elthontes is from eis erkomai, and of course the eis erkomai in the second aorist form becomes eis elthon. It's one of those principal parts that in the second aorist, erkomai becomes elthon. So eis elthontes, so it has that present active participle ending, but it's not middle. It's got the present active ending, ontes, but it's not going to be, and this is the genitive singular ontes ending, but this is not a present verb, it's aorist, because in the second aorist, the stem has changed. So eis elthontes tu kuriou eis ton oikon, ta daimonia efugein. Subject is ta daimonia, the neuter plural nominative, the demons. Main verb, efugen, fled. The demons fled. But the framework for that, the genitive absolute, is after eis elthontes and tu kuriou becomes the subject of this genitive participle, because this is the genitive absolute. So the subject of the participle in the genitive absolute is also going to be in the genitive. Now, notably, in this case, they entered into the house. Eis ton oikon, the rest of the genitive absolute phrase, isn't in the genitive case. So the direct object or the indirect object in this case entered into the house, a prepositional phrase, can still be in whatever case it's going to be in, but the participle and the subject of the participle is always going to be in that genitive case. So let's look at a couple of New Testament examples so you can see this kind of in the wild. The first one is in Matthew 9:18. Tauta auta laluntas autois. So this is a good tip-off where you have this genitive pronoun, genitive participle. You have your direct object, what it is they were saying, and the indirect object. This is still going to be accusative, the direct object, and dative in the indirect object. But how you would translate this is while, or in this case, because we have our proskuneo, this is going to be an aorist part. This is going to be an aorist verb. So we'd say when he is saying these things, and the he here is Jesus, to them, behold, archon, a ruler, one coming, bowed down to him, saying, a ruler, an archon, one ruler, having come, so here we have the aorist participle as well, having come, proskuneo is a verb for worship, but it could also mean bow down, probably in this case means bow down, bows down, bowed to him, saying. So this is setting up the speech that Jairus, in Mark, he's called Jairus, the synagogue ruler, is going to come and say, hey, I need you to heal my daughter. So what's being described here is that it's as Jesus is, when he's saying these things, then the synagogue ruler comes along. So the subject of this next verb, proskune, the bow down, is the synagogue ruler, one of the rulers who comes and says and speaks to him. But it sort of it's a way for the writer to describe pre-antecedent activity happening as the main subject and verb are occurring in the sentence. Another example in Acts 13:2, late orgunton de auton. Now notice you have the pronoun in the genitive plural, the participle in the genitive plural, but and they were worshiping, leitorgeo, and while they were worshiping, while they were worshiping, because of the subject, the Lord, and fasting, subject, tanuma tahagion, the Holy Spirit, said. So the main subject is tanuma tahagion, the Holy Spirit, and the verb is apin, said. But this genitive absolute describes the activity that's happening in the context when the Holy Spirit speaks. So while they, that is a group of believers in Iconium, or not Iconium, but as a group of believers is in Antioch, worshiping and fasting, the Spirit said, and is going to speak. So it gives some context for the main verb. This is an example of these genitive absolutes. So we'll see more of these as we go along, and you'll get a hang of them. The big key, the thing that you're going to be looking for, is that genitive participle, usually a genitive pronoun or a genitive noun that's going to be the subject of the participle. And you'll sort of may initially be kind of looking at it going, how does this string of genitives fit with the rest of the sentence, which is seemingly about a different subject, verb, and direct object? And then you'll begin to go, oh, this is the genitive absolute. It's set off from the rest of the sentence. So I don't actually need the genitive absolute to get this sentence in Acts 13:2. The sentence is that the Holy Spirit spoke, but it gives some context for around what's happening when the Holy Spirit does this speaking. So that's a brief introduction to the examples of the genitive absolute and where we'll see them in the New Testament.